I would also love to know who's in the room. So if you are an entrepreneur or a startup supporter or an investor, if you would share who you are, I would love to know. I'm sure Brian would as well. Quick background on me. I'm Allie Felix. I'm the platform director at Embark Collective. We help Tampa Bay's startup talent build bold and scalable and thriving companies, specifically in the tech and tech-enabled space. I work with 50 plus amazing startups in downtown Tampa in our 32,000 square foot hub. And I am a boomerang to Tampa. So I moved back here just 2.5 years ago. And I've worked in the venture capital and startup support space in San Francisco and New York. And I'm very, very, very happy to be home. So that's me. Brian, would you introduce yourself?
I would. And just like Allie said, please use the chat window. We're here for you. We would love to answer as many questions as possible. We really only came up with content for probably about half to 2/3 of the time. So that way we can spend a lot of time answering your questions and help out as best as possible. My name is Brian Kornfeld. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of Synapse. We're a nonprofit that's here to connect and organize the innovation communities across the state of Florida. We launched in Tampa Bay in late 2017. We had our first Synapse Summit, which Allie was a great speaker at, in March of 2018. We had our third Synapse Summit just this year in February, right before the pandemic hit, where we saw over 7,000 people attend Allie Arena over the course of 2 days. Of course, Allie Arena is home to the now Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, which rather proud of. I also am a boomerang. I grew up in Clearwater, Florida. I moved around. I was out in Los Angeles for a couple of years, and I've been back since 2009 to Tampa. I absolutely love it here. I love the state of Florida, and part of a personal mission is to really help to rebrand the entire state so that people think of us for the positive things that happen here in the state and not all the crazy things and the weird headlines that people love to spread around the state. So thank you all again for being here. I also love seeing familiar names in the chat window. So hi, Matt Spalding, and anybody else who's here. Please make sure we make this lively, active. We want to make it as good as possible. So I'll start with a first question for Allie. And Allie, what have you seen take place over the last 6 months? And particularly, what positive changes have you seen? Because, you know, this all happened, it hit us really suddenly in the beginning of March, and when everything just kind of was a haymaker to the face. And now that we kind of got used to it, we adjusted. What did you see? How did you see things go? And what are some of the outcomes that you saw?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a good question, and I love the emphasis on positive outcomes. I think we could talk all day about COVID and the challenges that we've all been faced with. I think some of the really positive things naturally that have come out of the situation that we're in is communication, empathy, understanding, seeing inside people's homes and their lives and all, like the full person, and not necessarily just the work person that we get to see on a day-to-day basis. I know for our companies at Embark Collective, we support 54 early stage technology startups. Companies have gone through a period of intense, focus and determination to figure out how is this affecting me? How do I recalibrate myself and my team? How do I put in, really strong emphasis and focus on culture preservation, given the changes and adaptations that have happened? And how do I leverage the opportunity in a positive way to really make an impact on my business? And so some of the companies that we've seen at Embark Collective have actually grown a lot through this time, which I think is a little bit of a crazy thing to think about, is how you might be able to leverage this time to help your business. So specifically, some of our companies in the healthcare technology space, like Professional Credentials Exchange, for example, has used this time to, buckle down on the funding that they raised to grow, to show that value to their customers, and potentially raise more funding. So those are just a few examples. I'd love to hear from you too, Brian. In hindsight, maybe what have some of those positive changes been for you in your mind in the Tampa Bay community?
So one big thing, and this one touches me a little bit personally, I'm also, one of my background attributes is I'm a Six Sigma black belt. So I do a lot with efficiency and processes. And I saw a lot of people really get to the core of how to be efficient as an organization. And it's something that, especially as a startup, a lot of times you have this idea and you just start doing stuff. And the stuff that you do is really fun and it's exciting, but you don't stop to think about what's value add and what's non-value add,
Mm-hmm.
organization and what's not. And so people really got down to it and said, what is this that's gonna drive value for us, for our stakeholders, for the community, for our customers, for shareholders, and what may not add as much value that we can kind of cut out? What's the fat that we can cut out? Not necessarily people. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of jobs that have been affected by this, but it's more of those activities. Companies that have done well have not necessarily reduced staff, but they've changed the staff into what jobs that they're doing to make sure that they're doing the right jobs to create the most value for the company, and really prioritize their activities very effectively and very efficiently. I've also seen a number of new companies come out of this, and some industries that have really taken the next step up. You see the virtual event space, even the platform that we're on, Lunchpool, which has taken a step up. Other ones, I saw an organization called vSummits launch a couple of months ago. DCE, which is a company that we work with, has done a lot in the virtual event space over the last 6 months and have really started to hone their craft and perfect their craft. Esports, and I've seen a couple of esports people through the chat window, has taken things to a whole new level, especially in those first few months when we were really in that lull of no sports at all. It was the only thing that we could really do.
Yeah.
What was focus on esports and things that we could do remotely. And so it's been great to see the funding come in, and it's been great to see these companies thrive and really focus in on what the next stages could be.
Totally. On the flip side of that, are there any industries that you think may have struggled locally throughout the past couple of months?
Well, the entertainment industry, and I'll put restaurants in with that in a big way. And we look at the innovation space, including culinary innovation and restaurant innovation. And there's no hiding that tourism is a big part of the state of Florida. A lot of the innovation that goes on with Disney, and unfortunately hearing 28,000 Disney workers across the world being laid off. That's an industry that is just being decimated. So if there's any way that you can find ways to support local restaurants, local companies in that realm, please find a way to do it. I try to as much as possible. If I'm going to get a cup of coffee, I try to find from a local coffee shop now, as much as I have a strong affinity for Starbucks. It's I really
that pumpkin spice latte, Brian.
I'm not a big pumpkin spice latte guy, but I know it's the season, and my wife loves her pumpkin spice lattes. So Starbucks isn't going anywhere. It'll still be there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that point too, because I do think, we are here at Tampa Bay Startup Week, and I think there's such an opportunity, as we kind of pick ourselves off the ground, and the entertainment space maybe picks up a bit, to think about how do these maybe large organizations, large enterprises in that sports, entertainment, hospitality space think about adapting technologies and maybe startup technologies to help improve their business, help improve their bottom line, and maybe even rethink some of the strategies that they were implementing before. So I think that's a really exciting, maybe bright side, blue sky opportunity that's on the other side of this.
And that's one of the things that there's a lot of thought process that goes into this. And if people are thinking about what are those blue sky opportunities and what are those North Stars that can come out of this, there's always going to be a big room for growth. We saw a huge growth take place with some new industries coming out of the 2008 through 2010 or 11 recession. The gig economy, the whole concept of the gig economy really got started and grew and was thriving based on people who were out of work, and started a lot with Uber drivers. And that's what they were doing. And it really took off in a big way. And so there's some big opportunities that really can take place on a macro level. And it doesn't have to be something as big as that. But right now, restaurant delivery, it has taken off in a whole new way. Even restaurants like Burns, which, nobody would have ever thought to eat Burns at home. Part of the Burns experience is the Burns experience. You go there for a great steak and to be served very well and to take the tour and go in the wine room and go in the dessert room, but people started to taking it from home, and taking it into their houses and pouring their own nice bottles of wine that they already had at home. And so it just recreated that experience and took it on a different level, and you're still getting a great meal.
Totally. I'm going to share in the chat room. The Embark Collective team created a page called TampaBayEats.org, and it highlights all of the restaurants in the Tampa Bay area that you can get gift cards for. So if you're not dining in person right now, you can still support them for a later time when you're dining in person, or takeout and whatnot. So I thought that was a pretty fun tool.
Well, Ken and Matt Spalding both just blew my mind by finding out that there's no pumpkin in pumpkin spice lattes. So
I'm still a fan. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like, if this is fall in Florida for me, then it's true. I'll have to do it.
It's gonna do it everywhere. So what trends are you starting to see now in investing? Now that we're kind of coming out of this and things are starting to open, offices are starting to open, and people are now getting back into a growth stage. Are you seeing trends in investing? Are you seeing certain places where it's stronger than others?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think while at first everyone kind of paused on life, I think venture capital firms are required to deploy their capital. And so we didn't see too much of a slowdown on the investing front locally and nationally. And I think one of the really interesting things that companies at Embark Collective have been able to take advantage of, and that we've been able to take advantage of as we support our startups as they're seeking different funding opportunities, is that we've seen a true democratization on access, right? So when you once had to travel to San Francisco, stack your investor meetings, or in New York or in Chicago, those folks are doing all their meetings virtually now, and that access has become really increased. And I think because of the time that we're in, we've also seen an increase in tools, free tools to get matched with investors, no matter where you're located that have been a true value add. So I'll give one example, and then I'll share in the chat room what those look like. But there is a tool from Lolita Taub. She is a Latinx investor. She just launched a new fund called the Community Fund. She is a tool that matches startups who apply with investors who are relevant. And it's a seamless, no cost, no anything. And one of our companies, our founders, Taj at Lease Cake, it's an Orlando-based startup that does management of leases and buildings and spaces. He's seen incredible introductions to big national firms who are interested in him that he otherwise wouldn't have access to. And so that's something that I get really excited about. And I hope that kind of reframed mindset that a startup can start and be built anywhere. And that, you should be looking at all of those places for interesting investment opportunities continues.
Yeah, the communication aspects of this have been very fascinating to see, and how you can build, grow, and scale a business in one place, but you can have workers in another place, you can have an investor somewhere else. And it's part of the narrative that we've been telling for a while. While there are a lot of great Florida investors, Florida Funders has been putting a lot of money to work this summer. Seed Funders has been putting a lot of money to work this summer. Now, other organizations across the state, we've been seeing the money flowing in. One of the cool things about Florida is the low cost of living. And so we've seen a lot of people who've been relocating here based on the good weather and then understanding that there's so many great benefits here. So a talent pipeline that's now working remotely can work out of the state of Florida, and all of a sudden the company is saving percentages of their money, and thus that's one of the ways they're extending their runway. Then investment value just goes up by a significant amount. So it's almost turning Florida from being you're a startup in Florida to, you're a startup in Florida. It's just a whole nother spin of the narrative of the conversation, which is really giving us a big boost right now.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you and I both touched on before, and that, we've had a lot of time to reflect, and we've had kind of these core values that we've revisited as individuals, right? And I think for many people, their family or their loved ones might be in Florida, aside from the other benefits, right? And I think never has there been a time where you maybe sought that out more. And I love that. I think we, as a Tampa Bay region, as the state of Florida, have a really opportune time to kind of thoughtfully capitalize on what you're alluding to, Brian, and think about how do we find this talent, showcase that there are really strong and compelling companies and opportunities and activities like this happening, and get them their interest piqued and kind of re-engaging with the thought of moving here or maybe working remotely here. And I'm fine if you just test it out. Like, I think we can convince you once we kind of welcome you into our community. But I get really excited by that. I think that's a huge opportunity for us right now.
Yeah. I remember hearing a story, and I forget which company it was, but it was a company that worked out of downtown St. Pete. And when they interviewed someone, they would bring them in on a Friday for the interview and give them their hotel room for Friday night, fly them out Saturday afternoon, and make sure their hotel room was right in downtown St. Pete. And they did that just to show that proof of life that, hey, St. Pete is not just what it used to be, which was a retirement center. It was nicknamed God's waiting room for a reason. It is now something that's fun and exciting, and you can walk around downtown and you can grab a drink. Well, maybe not now as much, but in normal times, walk around, go to the restaurants, go to the bars, and it's really fun. It's a really cool place right now. And also some of those industries too that have been doing really well, like healthcare and cybersecurity, and that matter a lot in this innovations in healthcare with home healthcare, the innovations in cybersecurity, now that everybody is working from home, and cybersecurity means something different because you're not in the same firewalls that you are in when you're in the office.
Totally.
Those industries matter so much right now, and being able to put that right on the forefront and be able to work in those industries in a place where they matter and you can actually feel the fruits of the labor makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I see Megan O'Keefe from the St. Pete EDC just sent a comment, and I've personally seen her. I do this on Twitter too. It's like a personal recruiting effort all of the time. You're like, if someone is talking about where should I work remotely for the winter, it's like St. Pete, Tampa, Florida, again and again and again. And I'm like, I love those kind of grassroots efforts and initiatives because I do think that they pay off. And to me, it's even just building that awareness time and time again and getting, the name of this market on the radar of others is, to me, a huge win. I think I would hope that we continue to be in the consideration set for folks relocating here. And I, at Embark Collective, lead an initiative called our Boomerang and Expat Network of folks who have relocated here within the past year or so. And I probably talk to someone once a week, every other week, who's making the move to this market and kind of facilitating community and getting those folks together. So I encourage anyone who does know someone, or maybe you are someone who is relocating to this market or thinking about it, please let me know. I'm happy to talk, and Brian, I'm sure, is as well. And we're very familiar with doing the whole song and dance of this is what it's like to work in the startup community in Tampa Bay, and these are people you maybe should talk to and places you should go. So I love that part. It's like a secret part of our job as Tampa Bay entrepreneurial community builders that I truly love.
It's one of my favorites. I'm a big advocate.
Yeah. So I kind of want to shift gears. I know we've been talking a lot about, moving to this market and all of the exciting growth we've seen. I think in this last couple of months, we've also seen how important, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the larger community and in our innovation community specifically is very important. I mean, the statistics, we all know about the number of women founders who receive funding. And then if you layer on top of that, the number of Black founders, the number of Black women founders, the numbers go down and down and down. It's between 1% and 2% of overall VC funding. And there's no doubt that this building a more diverse and inclusive community fosters a stronger community with more tangible our outcomes, right? Improved outcomes. So I'm curious what you are seeing in terms of what we can all do to ensure that we're building an equitable community together.
Yeah, I think the last few months, especially since some of the incidents that have taken place, George Floyd, et cetera, have just been eye-opening for a lot of people, myself included. I've had a lot of hard conversations, and I'm really happy that I've had them. And it really dawned on me in a big way in maybe it was May, June, when somebody took me aside and said, hey, imagine being a white Christian male in Nazi Germany in the mid 1930s and having the opportunity to step up and say something and do something differently. And as a white Jewish male, that one hit me really hard. And finally, it kind of dawned on me what this is and what this can mean. And we're in the innovation world. And so we need to help support those in the innovation world and the innovation communities. It is the funding for the Black founders. It is access to the communities. A lot of times the organizations are just not doing a good enough job of outreach into the communities, not talking to the college groups, and not necessarily meeting the underserved communities where they are, the Black communities where they are. It could be reaching out with certain industries. It could be reaching out, talking about certain technologies. It could be different support mechanisms, different funding mechanisms. I love seeing what some of the groups are doing, whether it's Seed Funders and their Opportunity Fund. Mm-hmm. Rest is doing a $1 million plus pitch competition. That's a national pitch competition, unless you live in California, Massachusetts, or New York. So Florida, you are very much a part of the pitch competition for Black founders.
Totally.
Synapse, we're trying to think of the long-term systemic change. What is not just going to matter to one or two founders, but what's going to matter to this whole community? And one of the things that we really believe in is the fact that a true diverse community is so much stronger than the current where we are. And so making sure that that goes from top to bottom, we're rethinking a lot of things we do in the organization. We're trying to get different support from different groups about having those hard conversations about inclusion, about equity. We're trying to make sure that we are doing a better job with outreach. I've had some great conversations with people like Marcus Howard in the community, Nancy Vaughn, a number of people, Avril Stinson. There's a lot of great resources for everybody to reach out to, and I highly recommend have one or two of these conversations and try to think about what it is that you can do differently, and what are one or two things that you can improve upon to ensure that equity is there as we go forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about inviting folks to the table, right? I have no doubt that it's not a pipeline issue. It's about finding the right networks and making sure that we're building, bridges and relationships to those networks. One initiative, I'll put a plug, that I'm really excited about within Embark Collective is particularly around educating women on how to invest in startups. And so we're doing a program this November, thanks in part to a grant we received from JP Morgan Chase called the Glaring Gap Summit. And it's not just to educate, high net worth women on how to invest, but emerging professionals and college students. And I'm really excited by that because I truly believe, to your point, how do we create the bridges? How do we build the resources? And how do we make sure that everyone is a part of the conversation? So thanks for sharing that.
And there's other events too, like In Awe is upcoming. I believe Embark Collective, Synapse, Bay Wave, and a number of organizations are helping to put that on. So there's a lot. Check out Tampa Bay Waves. Their cohort for the women founded accelerator. They have the tech diversity accelerator, and we're going to start to see more of this upcoming, which is great to see.
Totally. Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities. I'm really excited that we're kind of seeing this critical mass in our market about highlighting these voices and also, educating.
Yeah, one of the pieces of feedback that I actually got early is imagine being that startup community where people will want to go to for a diverse startup community. There isn't really one right now. People go to Silicon Valley because it's the best, or Chicago because you have the hard-nosed entrepreneurs, and New York City because it's New York City, and New York City's awesome. But there's no real place that's like branded as the startup community to go to for a diverse startup community. And if we can get there, that opens up a ton of doors for everybody. And so that's one thing that if we can think about that as a long-term vision. There's even if we get 3/4 of the way there, that's a huge win.
Yeah, I'm curious to that point as we think about how do we build a more inclusive and diverse startup community. Are there any creative strategies that come to mind that you actively work on using and building at Synapse that maybe some of the audience members can also participate in as we think about building a greater and a stronger and a more competitive, potentially, startup community moving forward?
The one thing that we're doing, or one of the things that we're doing in particular, is making sure we find the thought leaders, and not in, I want to call it a tokenistic way, because a lot of times, and this is one of the hard conversations that we had, was people of color know when they're being asked to be a speaker, person of color, and you can't do something like that. And so we've seen in the past with organizations, including ourselves, to be honest, that we've asked some people and then say, all right, well, we can't find anyone, so let's just get whoever fits the bill. That's not acceptable at this point. But we're making sure that we're doing a lot of research ahead of time on the thought leaders, and a lot of research and making sure we have the right support groups and the right advisory groups who are helping us make sure we can have the access and telling us, hey, here's some doors that you should open. Here's who you should reach out to. Here are some of the groups. Here's talk to these church groups. Have you gone out and talked to church groups before? And prior to 6 months ago, the answer was no, we hadn't. And so those are the types of things, if we can continue to do that, it just raises that level of awareness. And the more awareness there is, the more opportunity there is.
Yeah, I think, and not even just locally, but as we think about bringing in more national thought leaders to our market, to speak at our events, to participate, to, be engaged in the community efforts that we're all creating, how do we make sure that we highlight diverse voices there as well? I think we need to see more people that look representative of the Tampa Bay market at those tables, not just in our own community, but with the folks that we're bringing in. And it normalizes it, right? It normalizes success for everyone if you're highlighting folks who are coming in from out of market and being touted as, these amazing thought leaders who look representative of our entire community. So I get really excited by that. And I think in general, the more that we bring in those voices and normalize that, the more that we'll see folks here continue to, believe that they also have those strengths and opportunities to be those speakers, to be those experts, and to participate in the same way.
Exactly. And a big thanks goes out. I see Marcus Howard's on this call. So thank you, Marcus, for all the inputs and insights that you've had over the last few months. It's been extremely helpful and helped us with the direction of the whole organization and community. Again, shifting gears a little bit to something different, and this is going to be a little ironic because we're sitting here on a virtual platform, but virtual events and Zoom fatigue is a thing. Yeah. It really is, and it's been a little hard, and we're getting there over these last few months. So how do we get the community building and thriving together, even if it is in a virtual space? What are you seeing that as a state of the ecosystem? Are things shifting still virtual? Are things getting back together in person at all? How can we make this a safe community and a safe place for us to build and thrive?
Yeah, well, safety is my number one priority, being that Embark Collective is a physical space, right? So I think there are a couple of things that we do, that I do. Number one, it's so tiring to look at yourself at a screen all day. Like, I think tools like Lunchpool and opportunities in events like this are great reasons to come together in a virtual setting, right? But if I'm doing an everyday catch up with you, Brian, I'll probably just give you my conference line or my cell number. Like, I don't need to see your face. I've shifted a lot back to that phone line, unless it's really, necessary to build a relationship through seeing someone. So I think that's something that we all like. You have permission, right? Like, we don't need a Zoom call. But I do think when we do come together, like, let it be engaging like this. Let it have a specific purpose, a specific audience, a specific discussion that's taking place. I know Synapse's Live Bait and Learn event series has been a really great example of that. And then to the third part, Embark Collective actually has started to host very few events, and there's an organization locally called EO Tampa Bay Entrepreneurs Organization. They're actually coming into our space about once a month, and what they do, which I think is really interesting, is that they're hosting events in like a studio audience format. So it's a virtual event for their members, but they might have 10 people in our large event space. And I think that's a really interesting model as we think about how do we, slowly and safely get back to having some in-person interaction and some kind of energy that you really miss when you're 100% virtual, but still be accessible to the masses and safe, most importantly. So that's an example on my side. I'd love to know what other either virtual formats that you've seen and loved, or how you've seen folks kind of start to trickle back to a safe in-person environment.
So one thing for sure, and this is people who have worked with me before, people who understand a little bit of the thought process there. I hate meetings for the sake of having meetings. It's have a purpose. If there is a purpose there, the energy and the engagement goes up exponentially. It matters a lot. Versus if you get on the phone and it's just the same thing over and over, and you don't have a purpose, there's no why, whether it's with your team, with friends, with family, with people in the community, it's just going to drag, and you're going to lose an audience really, really quickly. Yeah. And so I really encourage making sure you have a purpose, making sure you stick to your purpose, and making sure everybody knows it, and knows what to expect and what not to expect. And so, for an example, early in the lockdown, Embark Collective was doing, what was it, like virtual lunches or open room, and it was just pop in if you want to, say hi for a couple of minutes and leave. So I popped in 3 or 4 times just to say hi to a couple people and see some friendly faces. I might have been in there for 3 minutes of my day, versus something like a Live Bait and Learn, which is going to be an hour, and we know what to expect, and we know what the education is going to come out of this, versus something like this, which is we know is going to be more community engaging and part of the conversation. So make sure the purpose is there if you're going to do something virtually, and even if it's a larger event, like our Synapse Converge that took place in June, or the Converge Global Entrepreneurship Week edition coming up in November. There's a big purpose behind it to serve for entrepreneurs, and so we really want to focus on that. And then I'm trying to be very safe with how to be in person a little bit and just kind of be seen just a little bit. And so walking into my office 2 or 3 times a week, you get to walk by 3, 4, 5 people, wave hi. I get to see Allie a couple of times a week and wave hi and see who's around, and maybe stop for a quick 5-minute conversation through our masks and physically distant from each other. But being physically distant and being socially distant are 2 different things. Physically distant can be 6 to 10 feet apart. Socially distant can mean something about, social, you're not having that social interaction with each other, which is why I intentionally use the term physically distant. You're starting to rebuild that social distancing and make that a little bit closer with each other, which is a really good thing. And it can make the difference of a day. It can be a smile, it can be a joke, it can be a hello, a friendly face, something that you're not seeing very often now. Yeah. Stay safe, but don't do anything that's not safe. If you are in any way immunocompromised, don't do anything stupid. Protect yourself, protect your loved ones first. But if you can, try to be a little present, and that physical presence will make a difference.
Yeah, I think something else for the community builders who are on the call is also, even, if you're an entrepreneur showing up to an event, I think resetting expectations around our attendance numbers, right? I think we're used to doing in-person events where we're maxing out a room, and like that's what success looks like. To me, in a virtual setting, I think curation is key. So if there are fewer people, but everyone there is really interested in engaging and participating, I think that's, the best possible outcome. So I think those expectations we have to shift as well as we're in a virtual format. And then, even again, as we kind of go back to this hybrid environment.
Mm-hmm. There's always going to be some level of attrition in a virtual environment as well. There will be people who are multitasking, and I'm sure a couple of you are, and that's perfectly okay. There will be some people who don't show up, especially if it's a free ticket. And there will be some people who pay for a ticket who don't show up, and it's just convenience and time. But there are also still some advantages of it as well, like you can watch things later, and there's always other ways to get involved or to get people's contact information. It really is just about making sure you can still do that, whatever connectivity works for you, and meeting the other person where they're at.
Yeah. Well, I think we have maybe a couple more questions for us to go to, but I am reminding our audience, please share any questions in the chat. We would love to make this a time for you to talk to us, or share your own expertise with us. But I see Marcus just recommended another platform called Gamer Jibe, which is like The Sims, but for online conferences. That's super fun. I'll have to check it out. So please ask questions. Let us know what's on your mind. We are here to use this time for you.
Yep. So one question that it did come a little bit, or we didn't think about ahead of time, but just thinking about as we go forward and still being in a slightly remote workforce, how are you keeping people in the platform engaged through the remote workforce, especially from the startup world where it's definitely a little bit harder when it's used to being the old cliches, two kids in a garage.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be a little bit different. How are you seeing that come together? And have you seen any good success stories?
Yeah, so I think for Embark Collective, we have a physical space, and we also have kind of this platform of support. Now, what we've seen is that while our physical space isn't at 100% capacity, we're seeing people engage, and it's just a matter of finding what's the right avenue that works for that person in their schedule. To your point, Brian, like what's the right avenue, what's the right topic, what's the right relevance. And so we've actually seen maybe higher engagement than ever before on our member programming sessions and our member coaching sessions. But I think it's really because it's tailored to that specific company and the challenges that they're going through, and the obstacles that they're overcoming, and working with someone specifically to help move the needle there. So I think participation is still high, but it takes, as with every community, you might have multiple channels to reach someone. It might be a newsletter. It might be that plus Slack. It might be that plus Slack plus, a direct message. Like there are so many different modes of communication that it takes to finally figure out what way that person likes to communicate and learn and engage in the community.
Yeah, and from a teamwork perspective, I mean, a remote workforce is not going to go away.
Yeah.
I was actually fortunate to have done it before. One of my previous jobs, I managed a team of 27 people that was in multiple time zones, and none of which, other than me, was in the Eastern time zone of the U.S. And so you kind of have to understand making sure people know what's in it for them.
Yeah.
And making sure people understand it's very clear-cut goals and very clear-cut targets that they're trying to get to. And also going with some shorter targets. Instead of thinking things of what are we doing this month or this quarter, maybe it's what are we doing this week. So that way you can kind of keep that accountability going very in a tight timeline. I like to think about it as if you're told you need to walk a mile from where you are to get to point B, and you're doing it blindfolded, most likely you're going to walk a mile in the wrong direction, or you're going to miss it. Even if you start off a couple of degrees in the wrong way, you're going to miss by a long distance at the end. But if you can course correct every few steps and make sure you're going somewhat in the right direction, you're going to get a lot closer to your target at the end of the day. And that can be communication. Like Allie said, it can be Slack channels and having that communication. It can be other free tools like Asana and project management. Monday has taken off in a big way, and I don't think that's a free tool, but I know that's a really strong project management tool. Any collaboration tools that can be used are people who use Google Drives. And Google Documents, and I know Microsoft has done a lot as well with the collaboration tools. Yeah. AWS does a lot. It's every one of those can matter towards making sure you're building a very strong team that can work remotely and stay engaged. The other thing too is some reward structure, just random things. I think one day I surprised the whole Synapse team with some Uber Eats gift cards just to say thank you for everything you've been doing. Nothing major. And just completely caught them off guard. Little did I know they were going to get text messages that all looked like spam, and none of them actually believed that they were real. As I was getting texts from everyone, is this real? Is this real? Yes, it's real. Like, just thank you for all you're doing. But little things
Yeah.
can make a big difference.
I love a surprise and delight. I'll pull on to one Tampa Bay startup company, PureFit, which has been remote from the beginning. I think something that I admire in them is their commitment to, company culture and engagement, team engagement outside of the work productivity setting. And so for them, it's making sure that they're peer fitting, virtually at this point, but going to their workout classes, which go back and tie back to their brand that they're building. But just having that time in your day where you're gonna, all your coworkers are gonna go work out or do whatever it is, socially distant or physically distant, I should say, virtually in some capacity, but still together. And I think that's a fun thing to think about too, is how do I replace that kind of in-person engagement that I might get just passing you, in the hallway and having a conversation with you when we're in this virtual world.
And there's easy things too, especially conversations you're not talking with people all that often about to bond over. I mean, case in point right now, pretty much every conversation that I've had in the last week with anybody in the Tampa Bay market has started off by talking about the Lightning.
Yeah.
And it could be the first 3 minutes of the conversation just talking about, oh my God, it was a great run. And I'm sure people know how big of a fan I am and that I've been going to games since 1992. But it just, you put yourself on that comfort level and that bonded level so you don't feel as distant anymore. And it's one of those things that replaces a handshake and maybe ordering a cup of coffee and that awkward standing in line, or cheersing with another type of beverage if it's more of an afternoon meeting, and whatever the beverage of your choice may be. Something that really helps to lighten the conversation and make things a lot more friendly, which helps to build the community.
I shared a free tool called icebreaker.video in the chat. I love this. It goes through, matches you with someone else on your team or in your community, and goes through like a series of icebreakers. And I love icebreakers. So I think that's when I just see toasty.ai, fun. I'm learning so much. I love these kind of ways to create culture and engagement outside of, what we're used to when we're in person, in a way that's fun in a virtual world.
Getting a good laugh from Kevin, and Kevin's someone who I used to work with at a previous role, and also his wife works with Allie at a bar collective, and absolutely a Slack channel with positivity. Community wins is something that's always a good thing. Praising someone. We actually do this with our team meetings every Monday. The last thing is thanking someone on the team for something that they did. And it just goes around in a circle. And the PS to that of, where do you get some barbecue? Maybe once this all dies down a little, I'll have to bring a brisket in to embark and invite someone.
For those of you who don't know, Brian does barbecue Sundays. And if you're not following him on Instagram yet, now is the time. If you are a barbecue lover. I feel like I'm picking up tips through osmosis watching your Instagram stories.
I did not keep up the whole day yesterday, but it was a good one. I tweaked the recipe a little bit and it came out great. Anyways, I digress.
Well, I would love to know from the group, you've shared quite a few platforms before, but like, you're at a virtual event. What gets you to actually attend a virtual event? Where are you spending your time now? What tools are you enjoying? Are there any interesting formats you've seen? I think that's helpful for us to know as community builders, and I'm sure for some of the other folks. So I would love to know from the group if there are any other suggestions in addition to the ones that have been shared.
Yeah, and I can even touch on a little bit. Things like Lunchpool and the way this is set up, the Remo platform, virtual summits, all works to get very similarly. It's the small tables, and the small tables enable conversation a little bit more realistic, like you're in person versus Zoom, where you might have 30, 40 people and it's hard to get a word in. When you're at a group of 3, 4, 5, 6, makes it a little easier. There's a tool called Brella that does matching, automated matching, which is something that we're looking really into for using for our big summit for next year. So we can help, even if we're doing things in person, help get people who have not had the chance to meet each other, who should meet each other, to start talking with each other. and anything that has a good, strong community feature, where people can keep up the conversation and keep up ways to meet and talk, and you can never reinvent the water cooler meeting,
Yeah.
but you kind of get close to it a little bit, where it's those chance occurrences and that are increasing in a way that can be value add. Those can make a big difference.
Those are good tips.
So we're starting to get towards the end of our time. Again, one last call for any questions.
Don't be shy.
Allie, what are you expecting coming in these next few months? Just as we wait for some questions, and how can everybody chip in to be a part of it?
It's such a good question. I think first and foremost, like, give people grace, whether it be your coworkers, whether it be your community partners, whether it be your friends. I think it's been a crazy year, and we all agree with that. And I think just giving people the grace to know that we're all doing the best that we can right now. I think that's, like, obviously such a personal response to that, but I think that's really important. Just knowing that we're all going through and experiencing life adjustments that we could have never fathomed. I think that being said, something that I'm personally excited about moving forward, again, as we've talked about again and again on this call, is just the efficiency and the curation and the opportunities that are we're getting access to being in Tampa Bay, and I think vice versa, being able to attract companies, attract opportunities, attract investment from outside of Tampa Bay into this market. I think all of those things ladder up to big impact for us, and so those are a couple things on my mind. What about you?
One is be a good person. And people who have tried to take advantage of the situation or situations in the past, people who try to screw someone over, like, it gets remembered. And if it happens now when people are in a tough time, that's going to be remembered. The big thing that I could see, the big change that I've seen over the last few months, though, and that I hope to see continue going forward, is people are listening. People are paying attention, and they're hearing what's in it for the other person. It's not always just about a quid pro quo. It's not always just about what's in it for them. It's about what's in it for the other person. And a friend of mine, Thomas Fine from Grow Financial, I was talking to him one day, maybe about a year and a half ago, and he said, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth. I like to use them proportionally. It was one of those that stuck with me in a big way. I don't know if he coined that term. I'm guessing that's taken from somebody else, but I'll give him credit because I heard it from him. And it's something that I've really focused on doing, is hearing both from a personal standpoint, and I think people are connecting on a personal level.
Yeah.
In a new way. You get to see people's dogs, people's kitchens, people's living rooms, people's bookshelves, or people's white walls that are behind them. And you're also connecting in a business way where you're actually recreating a lot of things. And so listening and hearing what that is can make a big difference. And if you start thinking about how can you help the other person, which a lot of people are doing, and that's been a big shift and a big positive shift I've seen in this community, is people are thinking about how they can help versus how they need help to thrive. That will keep us moving forward. Mm-hmm. Even at the summit in February, one of the things that I made sure to say was, Austin is weird and Chicago is windy, but Florida is authentic. And we are getting even more authentic with this time. And it's great to see how we're really coming into our own and being very proud of it.
Yeah, I love that. I couldn't agree more. I think I hear that anecdotally from a lot of people who relocate here. And I also think, it's our duty to do that, right? To help. Rising tide lifts all boats. Let's help our community members. Let's help our fellow founders. There's a speaker that we brought into Embark Collective. His name is Mike McCombie. He leads community at a venture firm in New York called FFVC, and he did a session on networking versus connecting. And I thought it was really interesting because it reframes, the transactional nature of networking that we, commonly get. Let me have your business card. Let me follow up. Let me send you a sales pitch or whatever that looks like. And reframing it with, like, let me understand you as a person and the things that you care about. And let's, build some similarities and common ground and help each other on those topics. And I think that sentiment echoes and 100% what you just alluded to, and it helps all of us become better entrepreneurs, better supporters, better builders in our respective market when we really use that mindset.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I think we're just about wrapped up with time. So if Allie, if anybody wants to know more about Embark Collective or what it is that you all do, where can they go to find out more, or maybe more about the events that you were talking about as well?
Yeah, please visit embarkcollective.com. I will put it in the chat because it's Embark with a C. And you can also reach me, Allie, A-L-L, let's see, let me take this out, Allie at embarkcollective.com. I'm happy to chat with any of you and share any of the events and opportunities I talked about. And then last but not least, on Wednesday and once a month, we do an info session for folks in the community looking to learn more about Embark Collective. And I'm happy to share that link with you too, in case anyone wants to learn a little bit more. What about you?
If you want to learn more about Synapse, go to synapsefl.com. Our upcoming event in November, Synapse Converge Global Entrepreneurship Week Edition, is going to be a 4-day, a couple hours each day, with a startup leadership track and a startup toolkit track. Really two very powerful ways to learn, both from our statewide university system and from entrepreneurs who have really been there, who have been very successful over a long period of time and want to give back, kind of an inside the actor studio type way, 15-minute interviews. Would love to hear some more and have you all be a part of that. So for there, you can go to synapseconverge.com, and I'm going to put it all in the chat window as well. And you can reach out to me, brian.kornfeld@synapsefl.com. If you do go to our website, make sure to join our newsletter. And this way you can hear about all the great events, our Libate and Learn, which is a take on Lunch and Learn, except for with a libation, whatever you prefer, every Tuesday or every other Tuesday afternoon at 4:30. So the next one will be next week. And I believe it's on the election, and not in a political way, but about truth and innovations, and how people are fact checking and making sure that we're being truthful and we're really reporting the great news that's going on versus some of the other things and some of the other ways people are hearing about news and stories and things that are blown out of proportion in different ways. So please reach out as well, brian.kornfeld@synapsefl.com, if you have any questions, any follow-ups, or if you want to just say hello.
Yeah, thank you all for spending your afternoon with us. So fun.
Yeah, thank you.